Megalophobia. Out of all the strange fears humanity has, it's hard to find one as fascinating as this. I will never forget the 30-meter monument that I could see right from my backyard when I was a kid. I won't forget my first skyscraper, or the first mountain I saw rising far away on the horizon. Since I was a child, I have always been drawn to scale. I loved reading about the 7 wonders of the world. In my children's Bible, my favorite picture was the Tower of Babel, literally scratching the clouds. I spent hours looking at dinosaurs in encyclopedias. It's still my dream to see a giant sequoia in real life. Even the sun felt special to me just because of its size. Even though I still can't truly comprehend how massive our star actually is. As I grew older, this subconscious attraction to colossal objects never disappeared. When I was a kid, it was the heavy footsteps of Godzilla in the cheesy 1998 movie. As a teenager, it was Lovecraftian stories about giant monsters of fun wikis. I was amazed that there are things in space billion of times larger than the sun. And a weird question started to bother me. Who are we closer to in size? A single-cell bacterium or something so massive that we look like bacteria to it? Spoiler alert, we are closer to bacteria. If you put a single-cell organism and the red hypergiant star Stephenson 218 on a chart, you and I won't even move from the starting line. All these things, kaiju, Cthulhu, giant buildings that exist, even larger structures than don't, and mind-blowing stars, they definitely bring a sense of deep anxiety. But paradoxically, they capture our attention. They don't feel dangerous or scary. Instead, they feel comforting, like time itself is standing still. Today, I want to talk about the paradox of megalophobia. We will look at this all from biological and psychological perspective. We will remember the giants from ancient myths and biblical texts. And of course, we will dive into modern media, movies, anime, and video games. Let's find out how to correctly show these giants, how to bring them to life on screen, and how they are supposed to sound. My name is Archelidius, sit back and enjoy the deep dive. Meet the amygdala. This part of our brain, despite its tiny size, is responsible for a very important function: survival. Hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution have programmed the amygdala in such a way that any object completely obstructing our field of vision is automatically read as a threat. Whether it's a predator, an avalanche, a calming glacier, or a massive wave, the brain always acts the same way. The amygdala bypasses consciousness. It injects a dose of adrenaline and cortisol in our bloodstream, signaling the body to take action. Today this process works a little differently because humanity has long learned to build tall structures, and you can see multi-ton trucks on the street every day. Yet, almost no one feels sense of danger from them. The scale of megalophobia has changed. I don't think any of us at a conscious age will be surprised by a 46-meter tall statue. That's only 10 meters taller than one of the wonders of the world, the Colossus of Rhodes. And a size like that seems quite ordinary. But tweak the scale by just 100 meters or so, and something strange happens. For some unknown reason, our brain stops processing what it sees as a norm, and inexplicable feelings emerge. While the Statue of Liberty looks like a slender, tangible figure that merely requires you to tilt your chin up slightly to take in its height, with the giant Buddha or the Statue of Unity, perception becomes heavily distorted. It's a human figure whose height surpasses any living organism or plant on Earth. A giant Buddha has no floors. Its clothing consists of monolithic, flowing folds of metal stretched out for tens of meters. The eye glides over this clean, perfect surface, finding nothing to latch onto, and the brain simply cannot smooth out the scale. In this exact second when our vision fails before the behemoth, the amygdala realizes we cannot control this. We cannot adequately comprehend it. And right here, at the intersection of total powerlessness and awe, is born what philosophers call the sublime, a feeling in which primal terror paradoxically transforms into absolute tranquility. Edmund Burke believed that the sublime is based on the terror, but when the terror does not threaten us directly, this fear transforms. It turns into terror at a distance. The brain understands that our body is not in danger, and the fear morphs into a thrill on the verge of ecstasy. Schopenhauer went even further, believing that the sublime helps us dissolve our ego. All our personal problems become insignificant against the backdrop of tectonic tectonic or cosmic grandeur. This is somewhat reminiscent of the overview effect experienced by astronauts when they first look at Earth from the porthole of a space station or from the far side of the moon. Our entire civilization and centuries of history fit into a blue sphere, hanging in the middle of endless black emptiness. Here is what astronaut Edgar Mitchell, a participant in the Apollo lunar mission, has to say. You develop an instant global consciousness, a people orientation, an intense dissatisfaction with the state of the world, and compulsion to do something about it. From out there on the moon, international politics looks so petty. You want to grab a politician by the scruff of the neck and drag him a quarter of a million miles out and say, look at that, you son of a bitch. If you look into the darkness depths of our history, to proto-religions and Paleolithic cults, we'll see that humanity's first gods were not human-like figures, but the elements themselves. Objects whose scale the mind simply cannot grasp. But when the time came to somehow depict or imagine these deities, ancient men concluded that something truly sacred and powerful cannot be proportionate to a human. It must overwhelm with its sheer volume. Nordic Jotuns, ancient Greek Titans, Mesopotamian Tiamat. Throughout history, similar motifs repeated time and time again, where something colossal predated both gods and humans. Even in Christianity, there were giant monsters described as symbols of primordial chaos. Curiously enough, whether it was the Jotuns, the Titans, or the biblical Leviathan, they could only be defeated by gods, that is, by something similar to a human. Over the years, Christianity heavily nerfed the scale of the creatures mentioned in the scriptures. But if you look into Old Testament texts, you'll find that even angels are not winged humanoids, but rather something unimaginable, something truly terrifying. Even though the description of angels never specify their size in our usual metrics, certain phrasing can still be seen as a proof that they were envisioned as giants. For example, the fact that their wings may sound like the roar of rushing waters, or that an angel stood with one foot on the land and the other on the sea. And here is how Aphaniel is described in the Book of Enoch. About this is one great prince, revered, high, lordly, fearful, ancient, and strong. Aphaniel is his name. He has 16 faces, 4 faces on each side, and 100 wings on each side. He has 8,766 eyes, corresponding to the number of hours, 2,191 eyes on each side. In each pair of eyes, on each face, lightning flashes. From each eye, torches of fire are kindled, and no one is able to look at them, for anyone who looks at them is immediately burnt. His height is a journey of 2,500 years. No eye can behold and no mouth can tell the mighty power of his strength, said the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be he alone. I feel like if an angel like this showed up in Evangelion, Shinji would have never gotten the goddamn robot. The Old Testament also mentions quite anthropomorphic creatures, the Rephaim and the Nephilim. These are ancient biblical races of giants whose very appearance sent ordinary people to primal awe. Their most famous descendant was Goliath, but the text hint at much more massive beings, next to whom a human felt like a grasshopper. And this motif of humans being haunted by huge ancient humanoids is absolutely universal. In Islamic tradition, there are a myth of Ush ibn Anak, a giant who lived during the time of Noah and was so enormous that the waters of great flood only reached his knees, and he could pluck whales from the ocean and roast them against the sun. In Hinduism, these are the Kumbhakarnas and Rakshasas, demonic behemoths the size of mountains capable of devouring entire villages. We see a striking pattern. For thousands of years, regardless of geography, the human brain stubbornly populated the past with giants. And the most amazing thing is that this need didn't disappear even when science broke the world into atoms and cartographers wiped the last blank spots on the maps. Some people still refuse to believe that we are alone on this planet. This is exactly why internet conspiracy theories about giants actually existing up until 18th or 19th century are still alive and well today. Myths about Patagonian giants supposedly encountered by early explorers, fake photos of giant skeletons from old mines, Tartaria conspiracies, and even insane theories that the famous Devil's Tower in the US isn't a rock but stump of petrified mega tree from an ancient era. People are ready to believe in the most absurd falsifications not because they are stupid. We just desperately need the thought that this mundane reality, completely devoid of any magic, once belonged to someone disproportionately larger and powerful than us. Reality simply cannot give us the sense of the sublime, which is why we transfer this feeling to a place where the laws of physics and common sense no longer apply, into modern art. For the longest time, behemoths in fiction fell into a few predictable, tangible categories. There were simply massive humanoid giants, there were giant beasts, like the colossal squid in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and there were man-made machines, like tripods in Wells' The War of the Worlds. All of these creations undoubtedly feel like a threat, but they are not mystery. Not like those biblical angels with thousands of eyes and wings. And then everything changed. In 1912, William Hope Hodgson wrote a novel called The Nightland. In it, the sun has gone out. The remnants of humanity have retreated into a giant pyramid several kilometers high. And out there, in the pitch-black darkness surrounding it, stand the silent watchers. Mountain-sized monoliths of flesh that have spent centuries observing every single movement outside the pyramid. And no one is allowed to look at these watchers, because a single glance will instantly suck the observer's mind into a mental black hole. Honestly, if I were just a regular guy named Jonathan living on the outskirts of Liverpool at the turn of the last century, this book would have absolutely scared the daylights of me every time the streetlights went out. Moving on. This is Howard Lovecraft's Cthulhu. The author described the scale of his most popular creation as a sort of walking mountain. A colossus whose head is hidden in the clouds. When I was a kid, reading the description of this monster honestly just sounded like an old-school creepypasta. Exactly the kind of thing you'd actually expect to find at the bottom of Mariana Trench. But what about Azathoth? He is a blind, idiotic god existing in a boundless cosmic void. Wake up Cthulhu and an apocalypse begins on Earth. Wake up Azathoth and an existence itself ceased to be. It's easy enough to imagine a creature the size of a mountain, but how do you conceive of a being the size of the universe? To be honest, I don't know. This concept of the ungraspable works brilliantly in a modern media too. In the film adaptation of Stephen King's The Mist, the giant behemoth is framed in a way that makes the audience instantly feel the staggering scale of this titan. Yet it looks nothing like any creature found in the wild. In Villeneuve's Arrival, the alien ships break our brains because they don't look like a transport, nor do they resemble any functional, everyday objects we know. It's just a giant black magnet hanging silently in the atmosphere. This sense of the unknown is the main reason why Cloverfield, for me personally, works so much better than any Godzilla movie. Right up until the very end, the director refused to show us the monster in full. We hear its roar, we catch partial glimpses of its silhouette passing between skyscrapers. We see the absolute devastation it leaves behind, but the creature itself remains a complete mystery. It just is. At this point, you might ask a very fair question. How do you actually show real giants the right way? How do you make sure that what we see on screen genuinely blows our minds? It's hard to me to judge old kaiju movies by today's standards, because the monsters shown back then honestly look goofy, if not downright ridiculous. Their movements are jerky and comical, they don't look terrifying at all, and the intended effect completely falls flat. But then again, we are looking at this as a generation that has seen so much CGI that we can immediately spot green screens and point out exactly where the 3D animators took over. But you have to realize that audiences in the first half of this last century were not nearly as spoiled as we are. For them, what they saw felt like hyper-realism. People sat there in absolute stupor when a giant King Kong appeared on the top of a skyscraper. Audiences literally screamed and cheered every single time that massive ape showed up on the screen. Today, it feels like no amount of special effects could ever evoke that kind of raw reaction in a movie theater. Nevertheless, I want to look at the work and techniques of different creators who actually managed to breathe life into giants, making them look and sound incredibly convincing. If we are talking about the exact feeling of the sublime, we have to mention Hayao Miyazaki's feature film Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. In this grim setting, Miyazaki delivers a genuinely brilliant sequence featuring the marching god warriors. It's a very brief scene, but it's more than enough to strike a deep sense of dread into the audience. Closer to the climax, we see a god warrior once again, but this time the emphasis on its grotesque incompleteness. And yet, its sheer scale is terrifying. Its unearthly, hollow roar completely breaks our sense of logic. And when it fires its proton beam, you literally sink into your chair because of how powerfully that whole sequence is directed. The man who animated this legendary scene was none other than Hideaki Anno, the creator of Neon Genesis Evangelion. And Evangelion in this case can be studied as an absolute gold standard for showcasing the sublime in digital art. Anno always frames his giant mechs and the opposing angels as if they were inside of diorama. There must always be houses, trees, mountains, or other everyday objects right next to them, ensuring we never lose our sense of scale for even a single second. The robots always move with incredible weight. Even when they perform a rapid attack, it is always preceded by a slight delay, a wind-up animation to sell the physics. The same goes for explosions. They always occur after a split-second delay to emphasize the pure mass and devastating force of the impact. Another incredible trick that I love about Evangelion is the fact that the EVAs are not actually robots in the traditional sense. Essentially, they are massive biological entities that humanity has managed to shackle and control using technology. And the moment that control sleeps and the giant shifts into its berserk state, your primal amygdala kicks right back in. What seemed like humanity lost hope just a minute ago instantly transforms into the ultimate threat. And I really want you to listen to how the EVAs and the angels actually sound. It doesn't sound like an aggressive, generic animal roar to anything we ever encountered in the real world. It sounds like unearthly, deeply unsettling, and at times profoundly desperate. The sound design itself is step and multi-layered. You can practically feel its weight. I'm a huge fan of great sound design, so I want to show you a few examples of giant entities where the audio isn't just good, it's phenomenally convincing. As I mentioned earlier, to achieve the maximum effect, virtual behemoths must feel incredibly heavy in every single movement, be framed against a real-world object to establish scale, and be backed by crushing high-fidelity sound design. But there are a few other clever ways to create absolute immersion. First up, space. In Shadow of the Colossus, you always feel like an intruder. Everything surrounding the protagonist looks as though this land belongs to someone else entirely. The massive empty vistas signal one clear message: get out. We actually have places on Earth that look completely alien and disproportionate to humans, like the megalithic terraces of Ollantaytambo in Peru. But this game takes the exact feeling and cranks it up to 11. The environment is so vastly oversized that the emptiness itself starts to weigh heavily on your mind. Another brilliant design choice is the concept of indifference. Look at the Colossus themselves. Their initial reaction to you is total ignorance. You are so entirely insignificant to them that at a certain point you start feeling like a literal parasite. You climb up at the Colossus' back, desperately gripping its fur, and it simply tries to shake you off in heavy, clumsy movements. You are of absolutely no interest to this giant until the exact moment you become an active threat to its life. Hidetaka Miyazaki clearly took heavy inspiration from Shadow of the Colossus when he came with the furnace golems and the walking mausoleums in Elden Ring, utilizing the exact same philosophy of living in different landscape. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask approaches Megalophobia from a completely different angle. You don't need to hunt for giants across the map, because the primary threat is constantly looming right above you. And it doesn't just watch your world burning Terrify and twisted green into your subconscious. It is actively accelerating toward an inevitable collision. You simply cannot escape the suffocating sense of impending massive catastrophe. Then there is a fascinating example of a game that can truly mess with your megalophobia, Militsioner. The plot centers around a protagonist framed for a crime that didn't commit, leading to one ultimate goal: you need to escape this town at all costs. The only catch? The long arm of the law in this world is represented by a literal giant policeman who towers way above the clouds, watching your every move. He can trigger a localized earthquake with a single finger. To him, you are nothing but a tiny, annoying insect that could be squashed in a split second. Essentially, it serves as a brilliant visual metaphor for totalitarianism and Big Brother, delivered entirely through our innate fear of the colossal. The concept looks so distinct that it immediately blew up on Steam, based on its gameplay teasers alone. I also really love how independent creators and enthusiasts, rather from professional animators, handle Megalophobia. The pseudo-historical Attack on Titan found footage video, which by the way was created by Kane Pixels, the future director of the Backrooms movie, serves as a prime example of how to evoke absolute terror with minimal resources. I'd put the Insolitum video series in the exact same category with their realistic, mockumentary-style footage of various titanic monsters awakening against the backdrop of real-world cities. And of course, no one will forgive me if I didn't include the work of Trevor Henderson in this video. His creations are terrifying precisely because of their imperfections, perfectly masquerading as genuine amateur photos of misty highways and suburban neighborhoods. This, by the way, is one of the main reasons why Cloverfield is considered a quintessential kaiju film, because the horror looks incredibly authentic due to a shaky cam effect. Imperfection entertains our amygdala infinitely better than some flashy $200 million Hollywood spectacle. To this day, I still believe that one of the most unexpectedly terrifying scenes in cinema history is the camcorder footage of the alien from M. Night Shyamalan's Sightings. You aren't scared of the creature itself as much as you are by how frighteningly real and mundane it looks. While I was drafting the script for this video, I kept browsing the Megalophobia subreddit, and I was constantly amazed by the sheer variety of things people find terrifying just because of their scale. Megalophobia can be triggered to varying degrees by almost anything, from the overwhelming beauty of a massive sunset or a space rocket being transported down a public highway, to a snapshot of Mercury contrasted against the sun, and even vertical TikToks simulating Earth colliding with the moon. But nothing has personally unsettled me more than the horrific howl that a Manchester skyscraper makes because of the wind. Or, if you want the ultimate trigger, look at this first-person footage captured by an astronaut on the International Space Station, where Earth looks like a bottomless swimming pool, pulling your gaze into the abyss. This clip feels like it triggered multiple phobias at once: acrophobia, megalophobia, and astrophobia all combined. It's terrifying, but an incredibly beautiful sight to behold. Generally speaking, space is the ultimate playground for megalophobia, simply because space is infinite. Creators can dream up giants of literally any size. Take celestials like Tiamut from Eternals and the Vision from Asura's Wrath, who towers over the Earth so massively that our entire planet looks like a tiny, interactive exhibit model in a museum under his finger. Look at this fun animation of Moon turning into a literal predator, rapidly approaching Earth to collide with, or this rendering of a supermassive black hole drifting into our solar system. Damn, forget black holes. There is something deeply unnerving, even if you just replace the moon in our sky with the Jupiter. The mere fact of having a cosmic body of this magnitude right in front of your eyes creates an instant permanent state of discomfort. I also want to specifically mention cosmic megalophobia in the context of man-made objects. What humanity can build can be just as terrifying and mesmerizing as whatever is hiding millions of light years away in the deep cosmic void. And I'm talking about both fictional concepts and things that are theoretically quite real. In the manga Blame, a human error causes automated builder machines to construct a megastructure so staggeringly massive that it uncontrollably expands to the size of an entire solar system, swallowing the moon, the other planets, and eventually the sun itself. It is endlessly empty. It has absolutely no purpose, and it crushes your mind not just with its desolate landscapes, but with sheer realization that you won't have enough time in 1,000 lifetimes to just walk out of a single room, a room that by volume is equal to Jupiter. If giant mechanical robots can be seen as humanity's attempt to recreate the power of the gods, then controlling outer space is actually the power of God. And it doesn't feel like a blessing, it feels like an absolute curse. The scariest part is that theoretically something similar could happen in our reality hundreds of thousands of years from now. Take the shadow thruster, a theoretical concept by physicists that will allow a civilization to move an entire solar system away from a looming supernova explosion. Visually, it would look like a colossal, glowing white metallic shield mirror covering half of Earth's sky. It reflects the sun's rays in such a way that the sun begins to move through space using its own energy, pulling the planets along on a gravitational leash. Theoretically, this could become the largest structure ever built in human history. Imagining anything larger, given the scarcity of materials in our system, is simply impossible. Let's make a deal. As soon as this video hits at least 1,000 likes, I'll immediately sit down to write a script about the paradox of astrophobia. As someone who has personally had a panic attack in childhood just from reading about the sun dying in 5 billion years, trust me, I have plenty of stories to share. But for today, I think we're done. If you enjoyed this video, tell me down in the comments about your own experiences with megalophobia and the paradox of the sublime. When did a massive scale capture and comfort you? Tell me about your favorite giants and titans from video games, anime and movies, or just write something nice. YouTube loves it when you are active, and I love it when YouTube likes my videos. Ciao everyone!